Hello students, this is Ms. Daniels again coming to you with another quick video talking about our ELA subject. We are going to be focusing on comparing and contrasting settings and events. Now, we talked about comparing and contrasting and what those things mean. We've talked about in class setting and events and what those things mean in regards to developing a story. Comparing and contrasting is very important. So make sure you understand what comparing means and what contrasting means. Comparing is showing or pulling out details from the text to help you understand how things are similar. And then contrasting is pulling out details from the text that allow us to understand how they are different, okay? Settings and events, okay? So settings are where the story takes place. And we've talked about this in class as to what settings are and how an author goes about developing the setting. And we've talked about events, that beginning, the middle, and the end. What took place in the beginning of the story, what took place in the middle of the story, and what took place at the end. This all comes together in developing what our in developing what our story is going to be about. And it kind of leads us through the story and helps us develop an imagery in our minds of what the setting is. Now, when you think about the setting, you should be thinking about your 5 senses or 6 senses, which is your sight, what the characters saw in the story, and what they smelled or what they felt or actually touched, what they also taste. You know, if you could say we taste the bitterness in the air, or we taste the morning dew on the tip of our tongue, or, you know, the author may use different ways to describe the setting using those the senses to help us really be a part of the story and understand where the story takes place. The events are described as far as just telling the story, what happened to the characters, what the characters saw, what they did, what events occurred, are very important to help you develop a story and develop that imagery in your mind so that you then become a part of that story. So as you read different passages and stories in school and at home or what have you, it's important to really focus on those details in the story that helps develop the setting in your mind and understand more about the events that occurred. And then you can go into comparing and contrasting them, telling how those settings and the events are alike and understanding how they may be different. You can also compare 2 different stories that way, in which we're going to be looking at some stories in your packet in which you can then use these skills to help you answer questions about how the differences or how the similarities can help you understand more about the picture, or more about the story, okay? So I want you to get out your pencil and paper and make sure you take down some notes as to what comparing and contrasting is of settings and events. So I'm gonna give you a minute to do that, and then I'm going to read, and so you should be reading along with me. If any case you need more time to gather your material so that you can take notes, please feel free to pause the video. All right, here we go. So using details to compare and contrast settings or events in a story will help you better understand what that story is about. The setting is when and where a story takes place. When you compare and contrast settings, you consider how the scenes are alike and how they are different. When you compare when you compare and contrast events, you consider how the things that happen are similar or different. Looking at the details will help you see the similarities and differences. All right, let's take a look at these 2 pictures. Take some time and really study the background and the foreground. The background is what's happening or what's going, or what you see in the back of the picture, in the rear of the picture. behind the main focus of the picture. And the foreground is what's happening in front of the picture. Think about what the characters are doing, what they could be saying, what their facial expressions are, what their gestures are. Take a look at these pictures and really just take a minute and analyze them, and think about the setting and what's going on in the picture. All right, and then now what you're going to do, again, if you need more time to just look at the pictures and take some time to view these, please feel free to pause the video now so that you can have more time to do that. Now, we did look at these pictures and study this this particular lesson in school. So this is definitely a review for you guys. So if you remember, this story is from, these two pictures are scenes from the movie called The Wizard of Oz. So what I want you to do is compare and contrast these two settings and the events, what's happening in the pictures from that particular movie. In the photographs, look for details about the place and what is happening. So take a minute to do that now and just think about it. Don't write anything down yet. Just think about it. Really look at these pictures. And again, you can pause the video if you need more time to really just look at the pictures and think about those, the details of what's happening in these pictures and where they are. And just in case some of you had never heard of The Wizard of Oz, and I think in class, a lot of you expressed to me that you had never heard of or seen The Wizard of Oz. And I was so heartbroken to know that you had never seen this movie before. It is totally a classic. So parents, shame on you for not watching this movie with your kids. So I would suggest right now that you go to Amazon or go to Netflix or Google or whatever streaming network that you may have, and find these movies so that your students can watch The Wizard of Oz and get a better idea of what exactly this movie was about. It's totally a classic. And another movie that that we also talked about in class was The Wiz. And The Wiz is a more, I guess, modern version or a more ethnic version where you have some hip hop, some pop culture in there of this same movie. And it's, again, another renowned classic. They also had a play that came out some time ago that was The Wiz, and it incorporated a lot of new, more, I guess, updated version of it. And it had some hip hop artists in it and things like that, where they kind of redid it and made the actual story. But two very classical movies here that are well worth the time to go out and watch. So make sure you take the time to watch this one of these two movies with your kids. All right, so let's talk about comparing and contrasting. Okay, so back to business. I just had to put that in there because, again, when we were in class, a lot of the kids hadn't heard of The Wizard of Oz before. So I wanted to put that out there that if you haven't seen it or heard of it, make sure you watch it, okay? All right, so compare and contrast, right? So when we think about compare and contrast, we think about those Venn diagrams or those T-charts or other charts that I'm gonna have on this lesson video as well, that can make it so that we can organize the similarities in the story as well as the differences. So in most cases, we use Venn diagrams to do that, and that's sort of the way we did it in class. But for the purpose of us doing this online and distant learning, and me trying to format it so that you guys can understand it, I won't be using a Venn diagram. However, I will be using another chart. But you can always use a Venn diagram, as we've done in class, to help you organize the similarities and differences between characters and settings and events in the story, so that you can understand more about stories and how they relate and how they're different, and kind of make some inferences on what all these similarities and differences teach us overall, and helping us understand what a story is about. Okay, so here it when you're talking about comparing, you use words like both, similar slash same, also, to, as well as. These are all indicators that we are comparing. We're showing how things are similar. Okay, so there's some examples there showing that how we can actually look at those comparisons in the form of a Venn diagram. And when we're comparing characters, we look at how those characters are similar by saying they both have this or that. They're both, like in this one, they're saying they're both curious. They both like to learn new things. Or in the setting, we're talking about it's hard to see there. They both are similar in settings, being that they are both in the present as opposed to being in the past. I think that's what that says there. And in the events, they both find something, or they both have some type of change in their life, is what I'm thinking that says. They both have the same it looks like interest in life, maybe. But I took this from this is just something that I copied and pasted here. So I apologize that it's really tiny. I didn't realize it was going to be that small as far as the font goes. But at any rate, it shows there in the middle, right in the middle, is where we would show how they are similar, because those circles are connected there. That's how we use a Venn diagram. And on the outsides, we would see how they're different. Okay, so when we're talking about contrasting or showing how the characters or the setting or the events are different, we would use words like however, in contrast, differ slash different, while slash whereas, on the other hand, but slash yet, though, although. Those are all ways that when we're saying something is different from the other, we would use those terms to imply, or you would see those terms in contrasting or showing how things are different. Okay. All right, so let's go back to reflecting on our picture, the two photos. Okay, so in the first setting, let me go back. So in the first setting here, we have the photograph that's in black and white. Then in the second setting, we have the photograph that's in color. Okay, so let's talk about the photo on the left, the first one. Okay, so where is it taking place? It's a farm in Kansas. And if you've seen the story, which is I highly recommend you watch it, you will know that the main character there, her name is Dorothy, and she's in Kansas. So the setting, let's describe this setting in here. There's a barnyard with a horse in the back, right? Let's go back so you can see that. All right, so you see the barnyard with the horse in the back there, okay? And then there is, it appears to be dark or kind of gloomy, right? It's kind of cloudy in the background. And there are fields, there's a tree, and there's a fence in the distance. Those are all things that we can see, and possibly when you read this, if you read that story, they would describe it in a way that you can kind of really develop that image in your mind. So the events that are occurring in the first photo, or the photo to the left, is that she's holding her dog and she's either talking or singing. Okay. Now, based on that, what's going on in that particular photograph, we can start, when we analyze it and see what's going on, we can start making some inferences as to maybe how she feels, or what she's singing or saying, or what the connection is between her and the dog, and things like that, right? But for this purpose, we're just kind of pulling out those details. But once we pull out those details and start comparing them, then we can start making some inferences on what's actually happening, what all of this means to us, and help us understand it. So let's analyze the second picture, or the picture to the right. So in the picture to the right, we can see a couple of different things, right? It's obviously in color, so that we can see some of those details even clearer or even better, and it speaks to us in a whole different way when we see it in color. All right. And when we look in the back, there's also, they're standing near a house in the back. If you look at that, you'll see that there is a little house back here, or a hut or shed or some sort back there in the background. Okay. There are birds and flowers and trees in the distance. It's more colorful, it's beautiful, it's a nice day. It just, like I said, is more appealing to us. So what's happening? What is the event that's happening? That same girl from the first photo, or from the photo to the left, is listening to a man dressed as a scarecrow and a man in a metal suit. All right. So those are just the details. We didn't make any inferences. We didn't try to guess or piece anything together as to what's happening, but being able to develop these thoughts here and organize what we see in a sort of graphic organizer allows us to start thinking about those things. Oh, I'm sorry. And there is a man in a middle suit that appears to be sad. I'll let that. All right, so here is my sort of chart here, or organizer, that helps me start to look at the actual differences and similarities in that photo. And you can do this as a Venn diagram or something like that, that helps you to start kind of looking at the differences and the similarities, okay? But for the purpose of this distant learning thing that we're doing here, I would advise you go ahead now and pause the video and draw this particular chart right here, where you have photo 1 differences, photo 2 differences, and in the middle will be both, meaning how they're similar. So if you need to pause the video, feel free to pause it so that you can take the time out to write out this chart. All right, so let's talk about it. So one thing that we see in the photo to the left is that it's dark, it's gray, and it's got a gloomy look to it, right? It's not as colorful. We also see that the picture is black and white, and the background looks a little dusty and dirty, right? It kind of looks like it's just, you know, just they're on an old dusty farm, okay? The farm doesn't necessarily look functional, so to speak. The girl is alone, and she's just with her dog. Okay, so I'm sorry, I should have done that one first. Okay, so the difference between in this one is it's bright and it's colorful. The background is different than the first photo. It looks nice in the background. It's a nice day. You have pretty flowers, pretty trees, and you have a little hut in the back. It's a nicer version of the picture. She's also with other characters rather than just her dog. Okay, and the similar thing that we see here is characters both look worried about something. They look sad or worried, like something's wrong, or they're trying to figure out something. So that's something that they have in similar, because if you look at the first picture, she has this kind of worried face on, you know, or this worried look on her face. And then the other one, she has a concerned look. And then, you know, then the Tin Man, or if you watched the movie, you would know his name is the Tin Man. But the guy in the metal suit, he also looks sad or worried. So, you know, there's kind of this common or this similar thing going with these events here, that they all look kind of worried, like they're trying to figure out something. And both pictures are outside, okay? So now, once I think about this, once I look at these details and I see how they're similar, I see how they're different, then I can start kind of making some inferences here. I can start thinking about making some connections and think about what all of this means, and maybe even go into what is happening. What could she be saying or feeling in the first picture? And what can she be feeling or saying in the second picture? And how are those related? or how are they not related, so that I can understand more about what's happening here and what this ultimately means to me. So now you have a passage in your packets, in your distant learning packets. Hopefully you have them with you right now. The first passage is a short paragraph, and it's titled Elizabeth I, the first, okay? And then the second passage is titled King John. And once you read these two, you're going to be using this same sort of chart here to analyze and break down their differences and how they are similar, so that then we can talk about that in our class meeting on Friday, as well as be able to kind of analyze it and make some inferences and talk about what that may mean in the story, so that you can then answer the question that goes with that. And the question is, which of the following ideas show how the rulers in these two stories differ? So once you go in and break down exactly what's happening using those details from the text here, using those details from the text to talk about how Elizabeth is, and then talk about how John is, and talk about how they're similar, we can then look at how they may be different. Okay? So if you have any questions for me, be sure to leave them in the comments. If you have any questions about this slide, I had some students post questions that were not about the lesson. I would prefer, if you have questions about about something that's not pertaining to the lesson, to send me a direct message through Remind. If you have questions that are about this lesson, then you can leave them in the comments, or you can send them through Remind, either one. So happy reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.